Before this video starts, if you enjoy this video, there are many more like it already on the channel, with many more like it to come in the future, so subscribe. I'm trying to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so I would really appreciate it. I upload 6 days a week on this channel, so if you're looking for some consistent basketball talk, this is the place for it. Also, drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and it makes a massive difference. Today's video is going to be a controversial one because it is on a debate that has literally been going on since before my dad was even born, and that dude is old as fuck. Hopefully he doesn't watch this video because I enjoy living here rent-free. What the fuck is that? But Wilt Chamberlain versus Bill Russell is a debate that has been going on literally since the Kennedy administration. And now me, a 20-year-old who definitely never saw these guys live, is going to weigh in, which I'm sure will get a dismissal from a lot of those who disagree with me, but there's nothing I can do about that besides for say that I have done extensive research into the careers of both of these players because, one, I just simply love the NBA and NBA history, and also two, I had to do this research for my documentary on the greatest of all time debate that I made about a year ago. So I know the ins and outs of the careers of both of these two. I might not have been there, but your history teacher wasn't there for the Revolutionary War, and they are still qualified to talk about that. So with that said, as you can read from the title, I believe that Bill Russell was a better player than Wilt Chamberlain, and when you consider the context of the awards that they won and all of that, by extension, that makes him greater than him as well. Let's talk about why I feel this way. Really, why I believe Bill Russell is better than Wilt Chamberlain is one simple thing. Normally I like to bring up other points, but in this case I really only need one. At the end of the day, everything is about winning. The goal in the NBA is to win an NBA championship. There are of course a plethora of other elements, but what I care about most is winning that title. And if I want to go all the way and win that championship, I am going with Bill Russell over Wilt Chamberlain with zero hesitance. And before you freak out, I am going to acknowledge the context of basically everything, so don't jump to conclusions. First of all, I just want to talk about Wilt. The biggest thing people use to praise Wilt is his numbers. I mean, how can you deny the talent of a guy who averaged 50 and 25? Well, yeah, I definitely cannot deny that talent. Now, those numbers are inflated in comparison to today's game based on pace and minutes played, but even those numbers adjusted are pretty damn wild. So yeah, I cannot deny the talent of Wilt Chamberlain. I would never claim that he's not one of the most talented players of all time, but the thing is, there is a lot more to basketball than talent. Just ask Andrew Wiggins. Effort, passion, leadership, having the right mentality, and more matter as well. Those are the areas where Wilt Chamberlain was lacking and Russell excelled. Like, there is basically no denying that Wilt Chamberlain was a vastly more talented player than Bill Russell. Like, I don't even think you can have that debate. Russell absolutely could not put up the numbers that Wilt did on the offensive end. Hell, Russell could barely even be better than most league average centers on offense, let alone Wilt fucking Chamberlain. For the careers, Wilt averages twice the points per game that Russell did on 10% better shooting from the field. And then on the defensive end, though I definitely believe Russell was a pretty notably better defensive player than Wilt, Wilt certainly was no slouch by any means. And outside of that, they are about equal at rebounds, and I'd say Russell is a slightly better passer. Of course, Wilt has averaged more assists in his peak, but I think Russell is the better passer. So as a baseline talent, Wilt knocks Russell out of the fucking park, but as I said, there's more to the game than talent. Let's talk about why Wilt only won one championship in his prime and why he averaged 50 points per game. And the reason I mention those two in the same sentence is because they are directly correlated. Those two show the flaw with Russell, which is why he really never won championships, not because of the things that people like to blame it on. In the season where Wilt averaged 50 points a game, he shot the ball 40 goddamn times a game, and even though yes, he did shoot 50% from the field, shooting the ball that many times from one player is just not good for your team. The Philadelphia Warriors won just 49 games this year, despite Wilt having, count 'em, 4 Hall of Fame teammates. Since that seems to be such a big point of contention for the Wilt over Russell crowd. The next season, when Wilt averaged just a measly 45 points per game, the team won just 31 games. Wilt putting up these big numbers ultimately did not translate to winning. Sure, it's more fun to watch, you won't see me arguing with that. Of course, a guy putting up 50 points is more fun than a guy putting up 16, But when you consider the context of everything else, I'm taking the guy who's putting up 16. That player can be more valuable when they're better at every other aspect of basketball. You could give Wilt Chamberlain basically the same criticism you give Carmelo Anthony. Like what Chauncey Billups said, scoring 30 meant too much to Melo. Scoring 50 meant too much to Wilt. He cared too much about his numbers and being the star player. He also really didn't seem to be all that passionate about basketball. There are so many anecdotes about how much Wilt Chamberlain really did not try all that much in workouts, didn't really put that much effort in, was going to parties all the time. The reason why he claimed to eventually want to be out of Philadelphia was so that he could date white women in Los Angeles. Now, of course, it's fucking horrible that he felt that he had to go to a more progressive city for that to happen. Hot take, racism bad, but that does show where his priorities were, and it wasn't on basketball. He's also known for trashing his teammates from time to time, both in the media and I believe he did it in a book that he wrote after his career was over. Like, that's not a great mentality to have. Flip this over to Bill, and it's the polar opposite. Bill Russell was focused on pretty much basketball and basketball alone, and he was a phenomenal leader who uplifted his teammates. He was such a good leader that to close out his career, he was a player coach, meaning he literally coached a team to 2 championships to close out his career while still playing the game. If that doesn't speak to his leadership, I don't know what will. But now let's take a look at the opposite side of this argument for those who believe that Wilt is over Russell. The thing that they like to ask, or really just say themselves, is if you flip these two on their team situations, the results would be pretty much the same in terms of the team success, if not even better for the Celtics, because they believe Wilt is better than Bill Russell. The logic for this being basically, well, Bill Russell had more help than Wilt Chamberlain, which is true. However, it is incredibly exaggerated. I'm not going to go into crazy detail here, but I would say roughly speaking, Wilt had about 70% of the degree of help that Russell had throughout his career. Now, that help was more consistent in Russell's case because he stuck with one team his whole career, but you could make the argument that that was on Wilt Chamberlain himself. Also, please, for the love of God, especially in this specific time period, stop using the blanket Hall of Famer argument. Because basketball was really new in a professional sense at this time, a lot of players who would be considered just role players made the Hall of Fame because basketball was just so new and they were the pioneers. That's just kind of how it was. The Hall of Fame is up to interpretation, and fickle as it is, it's even worse when you're looking at players from the 50s and 60s and 70s. But even with that Hall of Famer problem not even being taken account for, I took a look back at Wilt's help when I did the Goatmentary, and I put some points for each player in that documentary for the help that they had. 10 points for a superstar, 5 for a Hall of Famer, 3 for an All-Star, and 1 for a notable, really good role player. I also gave a multiplier for players who spent their whole career on one team and also basically on one team like with MJ, because it isn't fair giving Jordan just 5 points for Scottie Pippen with him having him for his entire prime. That's worth a whole lot more than just that. But I say all of this because when I tallied all of this up, Bill Russell had 75 help points and Wilt Chamberlain had 63. In fact, of all the Goatmentary candidates, Wilt Chamberlain came in 3rd place out of 9 candidates. The narrative that Wilt Chamberlain had bad help was nothing but that, a narrative. And the thing is, moving it back to that hypothetical, moving Wilt Chamberlain onto the Celtics in place of Bill Russell would have been disastrous because that team was built around the way Bill Russell played, not how Wilt played. These Celtics pretty much built around Russell from the beginning. This was a collection of scorers and playmakers and the guys like Bob Cousy and Sam Jones. This team really allowed Russell to focus on his 2 biggest strengths as a player, defense and leadership. Wilt coming into Boston and shooting the ball 30 to 40 times a game would fuck that up. The leadership wouldn't be there, the defense wouldn't be as good, and they wouldn't play like a team as well as they did. See, the biggest way to knock Wilt Chamberlain in this conversation is ironically by looking at the best season of his career. And no, this is not the season where he averaged 50 points per game, it was his 1967 season. That year, the Sixers hired a no-nonsense head coach who did not take any of Wilt Chamberlain's shit. He basically bullied him into being a good teammate and being less selfish selfish. This kick made Wilt incredibly efficient as he shot the ball less and his team scored more points. If you can average 50 points a game on good efficiency, you can average a crazy efficient 25 a game, which Wilt did, shooting nearly 70% in the process while being more of a playmaker and defensive player. The thing is, this was the Wilt that, yes, could replace Russell on the Celtics and make them even better, but he didn't have the capacity to keep this up. Wilt insisted on being a big-time scorer again, which tore apart the team that he was on at 67 and ended up with him in Los Angeles. Wilt finally did it. He made that adjustment that was necessary for him to become a championship player, and he won a championship in 1967. But he had to fight against his own mentality so hard in order to achieve that, and it just was too unnatural for him, so he went back to what he already was. He just simply could not do that over an extended period of time. For Wilt Chamberlain, what is natural to him is to be selfish and to worry about his numbers. For Bill Russell, his natural instinct is to be pretty much as selfless as possible and just go for it any way you can. His focus was on winning and winning alone. For Wilt Chamberlain, his focus was on getting his numbers and getting white women, I suppose. And at the end of the day, give Wilt Chamberlain all the talent in the world, which he basically had, and I'm still taking Bill Russell because he is probably the greatest leader in NBA history, and I think he showed that with 11 goddamn championships. That's not just a matter of the help that he had, that took the mentality that he had to accomplish that. So that is why I believe Bill Russell is better than Wilt Chamberlain, and of course, by extension, greater all time than him. That is the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.